Hey guys, and welcome to this episode of the Happy Knitting Podcast. My name is Julia and I'm coming to you from Germany. Today is Saturday, the 21st of July 2018, and I am so glad you're joining me today to talk about some knitting. I'm sadly re-recording this because for the first time in a while, I had actually recorded a perfect episode and everything went really well. And then when I went to upload it, suddenly the file or part of the file was gone. So yeah, I'm starting all over, but sometimes that's not a bad thing, so we'll see how it goes. But what might happen is that at some point I forget what I already talked to you guys about and what I talked to you guys about when you actually didn't listen because the file got lost. So we'll see how that goes. Anyways, I'm super glad you're joining me today. Coffee has kicked in, which is a very good thing because this morning I was very grumpy, very tired, and now I'm feeling much better. I'm still suffering from a tiny bit of hay fever, so I'm sorry if that bothers you, but it is much better than it was last week, which was partly the reason why I didn't record last week. So, to keep things in order, let's talk about administration stuff first, followed by finished objects, works in progress, stash acquisitions, and then life in general. And before I get into all the nitty things, one thing that I wanted to announce and say thank you to you guys about is the fact that Kai and I are getting married. We are getting married next year, probably in March. And I announced it on Instagram, and the outpouring of love and messages and comments has just been incredible. So thank you guys so much for every comment and every message and everyone who got in touch. It really meant so much to both of us. I am so sorry that I cannot actually reply to every single person, but please know that it meant so much, it still means so much, and both of us, we are so excited. It is actually really funny as well because we had been keeping our engagement a little secret for a while, for reasons which I'll get into possibly later. But I was wearing my ring on my last episode, and it seems a couple of you guys picked up on that, which was quite funny. I thought that might happen, and thought it was quite funny because, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like we were keeping a secret to save our lives, but that was just interesting. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and more on the wedding front at the end of the podcast. Also the topic of how I will be handling that sort of topic on the podcast, but we will try to stick to knitting now and keep everything else for later. So, Ravelry group. We have a group on Ravelry called the Happy Knitting Podcast. I will always link it right underneath this video, or you can just find it by searching. And that is where we'll have all giveaways and knit-alongs and introduction threads and all kinds of fun things going on. So please feel free to join in. At the moment we have the big knit-along, which is the Summer Stash Down Cal, which is so fun. The idea is to just stash down, use yarn from your stash. You don't need to do a yarn diet or anything, but just get some skeins out and play with your yarn. Maybe use that special yarn that's been lingering, that you've been saving, or maybe look for things that you haven't even picked up in a while and just knit your heart out. The Summer Stash Down is running until the end of August, so throughout summer, and you still have plenty of time to join in. And again, I am overwhelmed with the amount of people who are joining in, the amount of finished objects we have already. It's really fun. And I might go into my personal Summer Stash Down progress a little bit later. I think that is it for now. So places where you can find me on Ravelry, you can find me as Wuepfi, which is WUEPFI. And I am mostly on Instagram, which is where you can stay up to date the best, because that's where I will post if, for example, I will miss another episode, which might actually happen next week. And so if you are on Instagram, please feel free to find me there as well. Yeah, so that is that, and let us jump into some finished objects. And once again, I'm nervous because I can hear Kai running around in the background, and that always kind of makes me feel a little bit weird about podcasting, because it's not like I've been doing this for 3 years, right? Oh well. So, finished objects. I have one finished object. I feel like I have more and I've kind of forgotten about them, so I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. But I have finished these amazing socks, which I love so much. These are plain vanilla stockinette socks. I did 64 stitches on a US size 1 2.25 millimeter needles. And the yarn is a double-stranded sock blank from Das Mondschaf. So Sabrina sent me this as a gift, which was so kind of her. And this was also the first time that I've ever knit from a double-stranded sock blank. So if you're not familiar with that, the idea is with a double-stranded sock blank that both strands of yarn have been dyed exactly the same way because they were basically stranded together. And that way, the patterning that you get when you knit from the sock blank, you knit two socks, the two socks will be almost identical, as you can see here. So I wound off the sock blank, I wound it into two little balls and then just knit 2 at a time socks. And I absolutely love how these came out. I named these my Christmas socks because, as you can see, the red and green just is very Christmassy to me, but I just completely love these colors. And I'm so happy with these. So these are done, and these are my only finished object for this podcast. So I will keep straight going on to works in progress. Oh yeah, and don't be surprised. Apparently, since I didn't podcast last week, I have forgotten how to podcast, and I have forgotten how to talk English or even how to talk at all. So very sorry about that. Alright, breathe, and let's start with some works in progress. And you guys, I only have one sock project on the needles. How crazy is that? But I do kind of want to cast on another. So the idea was that, sorry, ramble incoming. The idea was that I was trying to focus less on socks because I just knit so many socks and then I don't get around to the garments that I want to knit, which is why I've only had one on the go. But today I really, really, really feel like casting on socks, so I think that's going to happen. There you go. So in here are my socks using the yarn that was was formerly known as Das Regenbogenschaf. And Maike, who is the dyer behind Das Regenbogenschaf, has recently changed her name to Scuderia Fine Yarns, I believe. So I'll try to link that somewhere so you can find that. But when we met at a yarn festival in the beginning of the year, she gave me a skein, or let me pick a skein of her merino sock yarn to try to see how I like it. So thank you very much, Maike. And again, in all honesty, she gave me the yarn for free, but I'm not getting paid, and no one asked me to say anything good or bad or anything about this yarn. Everything I say is just my personal opinion. So anyways, this is the yarn. This is in one of her chaos colorways, which means it's a one of a kind, or just when she plays around in the dye pot, I suppose. And I cast on a pair of vanilla socks. And I really, really like these. I really like the fact that this yarn is really colorful. There's so many colors in here, yet they're also a little bit muted, like they're not super rainbow bright. Oh, and I really enjoy that. I really, really like it. I also really enjoy the base. This is a merino nylon, but it feels very fine. It almost has a bit of a halo, and it's very drapey. So I think this would be a really good yarn for garments as well, even though I know it's not meant for garments, but I like to knit garments out of sock yarn anyways. So this is very soft. Like I said, it's not the super squishy sort of thick sock yarn. It's more like a finer yarn, and I really like it. So I have turned the heel. I think I had just turned the heel when I last spoke to you, or maybe I was just ready to turn the heel. And then I did a work trip. On Monday I went to Stuttgart and back, and I managed to do some knitting. So now I'm almost ready for the toe. I'm actually quite sure. I need to measure it, but that's where we are with that. I haven't done huge amounts of progress, but still quite happy with it. So that is my only sock project. Next up, we have 2 works in progress, which you've already seen. And I dropped one. So first of all, I have my brioche shawl, which I showed you last week. This is the Residence shawl by Lavagna and Patricella. And I just was looking for the perfect crazy 2-color brioche pattern for these 2 skeins, which are both Ching Fibers, who is a UK-based dyer. This one is called Smiler and it is crazy neon. This one is called Cuttlefish. They are both in her merino singles. And I just wanted a brioche shawl because I feel like this combo is kind of crazy. I really just wanted to put these 2 colors together, and I feel like with brioche you get away the best with sort of unusual yarn combinations. So last week I think I wasn't very far into the shawl, but I've made some progress. Progress on this isn't super fast, but anyhow, this is where I am with it. So I should show it to you the other way around. It's a top-down shawl, so this is going to be the top once I block it out, and this is where I am on it. So as you can see, it's just a really fun pattern. It's a syncopated brioche pattern, which is really fun. I've never done that before. It's not difficult, but it just keeps your interest. And so this is theoretically the front, even though brioche doesn't really have a back and a front. And this is the other side. So I really like it. This is where I broke the yarn because I had a huge tangle and I feel like I aged 10 years trying to fix that. Yeah, so this is where I am on it. The shawl has a really big fringe, and in the beginning I wasn't quite sure if it was going to be my thing, but now I'm actually quite excited to try that because it's a slightly different style for me, but I think it would be really fun. So yeah, that is where I am with that. It's a really easy pattern. The only thing I would say is if you haven't ever knit brioche, I'm not sure if this would be the perfect pattern, because with this syncopated brioche stitch, what happens is that you usually with brioche you knit every row twice, and you always start with your color A and then the second time you knit your color B. Whereas with this you vary, so sometimes you start with the one color and then sometimes you start with the other color, which again isn't difficult, but it's just one more thing to keep in mind. So I feel like if you're completely new to brioche, maybe another brioche pattern might be best, but maybe that's just me. So yeah, that is that. I feel like I'm racing through my projects. And next up, I have 2 sweater projects. Because remember when I said I was only going to have 1 sweater on the needles at a time, and then I just threw that out of the window, so yeah. So the sweater that you've seen before is of course my Birkin sweater, which is a pattern by Caitlin Hunter. The original Birkin is made out of lots of different colors. And then some people have decided to make it a 2-color sweater. And what I have done is I'm doing a 3-color version. So let me untangle myself. There we go. So this is the sweater, as you can see. Last week when I showed it to you, I was, I think, at the bottom of the color work. And what I've done since is I have finished the color work, separated for the sleeves, and I'm almost done with the body. So there you go. I feel like I haven't had that much knitting time, but it's been 2 weeks since I last recorded, and it's been quite stressful. So just having a simple project to, after the shaping, just go round and round and round has been really, really fun. The yarn I'm using for this is Holst Super Soft in the colorway Almond, Purple Haze, and I don't know what this purple is because I threw the tags away. But Holst has like at least 10 different purple shades, and oh well, it'll be a mystery purple. You know my love of Holst garns, so I won't go into that, but this is where I am with it. This is what my floats are looking like. The only thing I will say is that the fit of this isn't great. And I kind of expected that because a couple of people who have knit the Birkin said the same thing. And it makes sense that the fit isn't great because you have a very, very long chart and there are no increases or decreases. So the shaping of it isn't perfect, and I kind of expected it, which is why I decided to make it oversized, because I'd rather have an oversized sweater than one that is too tight around the yoke and then just fits really bad. So I tried it on and it's okay, and I'm hoping that blocking will make it better. It's not fantastic, but again, I kind of expected that, which is a little bit sad, but oh well. Besides that, after separating for the sleeves, I have just done my own shaping, because my personal preference for shaping is, I think, quite different to Caitlin Hunter's sweaters, which are mostly they don't have much shaping and they tend to be kind of cropped, which isn't really my personal style, but that is just personal preference and not a critique of the pattern, of course. So that is that. I'm knitting on 3.25 millimeter needles, which is a US size 3, and I am on the bottom ribbing. And one thing I should probably mention is that I did some short rows at the very bottom of the sweater, because I kind of wanted it to be like a high-low hem, like just very slightly. So the bottom or the back is going to have like a dip, whereas the front doesn't, and I think that will be very, very flattering. So yeah, hopefully I'll be done with that soon. I'm definitely very close to finishing the body. And I'm again planning to do like 3/4 length sleeves, because my Holst sweaters, they tend to be quite light, which I enjoy. And then with sort of like medium length sweaters, sleeves, you can just wear them all the time. So that is the plan. And then the last couple of days we've had really, really hot weather. It's been in the 30s and everyone has been sweating their butts off. And what have I been doing? I have been looking for the perfect DK weight sweater. So let's talk about the yarn first. The yarn is actually a yarn that I showed you last week, which is part of my souvenir yarn from France. So this I got at La Droguerie in Nice or Nizza, which is a beautiful yarn store. I talked about it in detail last week, so I won't go into detail now. But this is their DK weight. It's actually a really, really interesting yarn. Let's see if I can show it. I thought it had kind of like a chain net construction, but when I looked at it more closely, it turns out it is just it's singles that are very, very loosely plied together, and then those two plies are plied again, and it creates a really nice sort of lofty yarn, which I really, really enjoy. So this is about a DK weight. I got 200-gram balls or cakes of this. They just rounded off the cone, which is perfect because it means that it's all the same dye lot. And I just wanted to knit a simple sweater. I had quite specific expectations, to the point where I almost designed my own sweater. But then I decided to do the flax, which is a pattern by Tin Can Knits. I think it's written for a different weight. It's written for a 18 stitch gauge. And with the needles that I chose, which are US size 8, I believe, they're 4 millimeters. And I dropped stitches just now. I got a 17 stitch gauge, which is close enough that I just did some maths and figured out which size I need to knit in order to get the size that I want to achieve. And yeah, so I'm at a very, very weird point to show this to you, and I just realized I split a stitch there. Oh, that's not good. Do I have a stitch marker to mark it? Yes, let's mark it on the podcast, because that's not good. That's not good. Where did it go now? There we go. Sorry for the interruption there, but this yarn is kind of splitty just due to the nature of the yarn. And I'm not sure if you can see, but there's one stitch where I split the stitch, and I need to fix that, which is not a problem. Anyways, so this is the flax sweater. It's a top-down raglan sweater, very, very simple construction. And I'm at the weird point. I'm almost ready to split for the sleeves. So my plan was to actually split for the sleeves before I show it to you, because then it would be much easier to see. But that didn't happen, so I'm almost splitting for the sleeves, and you can see sort of like very simple raglan increases. And I think this is going to be the perfect sweater. I've been wanting like a comfortable raglan mustard sweater for ages, so this is perfect. Once I've split for the sleeves, I'm probably going to do my own thing in terms of shaping again and just try it on as I go. And yeah, I'm very, very excited about these. The only thing that I have to complain about is that I don't personally like interchangeable needles, but I didn't have 4mm fixed circulars. So I started this with my Knit Pro Nova interchangeable set, and it was just giving me a huge headache. Starting from not finding the right cable to then finding it, but then the needles didn't fit onto the cables because Knit Pro is, I still like Knit Pro and I do buy their stuff, but they're a little bit hit and miss. So one of the needles didn't fit onto the cord. Then the key, which you use to fasten the join, didn't fit into the needle. End of story is I've ordered myself some Knit Pro Zings, just this fixed circulars, because I'm building a collection of those anyways. I really like them and I was missing that for my collection, so I've ordered that with Amazon Prime and I hope it'll be here soon because these are doing my head in. But that again is just personal preference. I've talked about my fixed versus interchangeable needle thing previously, so I won't go into too much detail. The yarn is also kind of blowing out. It's kind of darker. Let's see. It's not really showing up perfectly to color, but it's fine. So yeah, that is all of my whips. And like I said, there might be a sweater cast on in the very near future. So that is it for works in progress. And before I go into what I've been acquiring, one thing I forgot to mention at the top of the episode is that the winner of the last knit-along, the winner of the Couch and Crackers Socks knit-along, still hasn't gotten in touch with me. So please watch last week's episode if you have participated. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but please get in touch and you will win this skein of beautiful yarn from Holland Handmade Co. Who is Erin. I used the same yarn in a different one-of-a-kind colorways for my actual design, and I'm sure you will love it. So that is that. Let me have a drink of water and then we will move on to my stash acquisition. And if you're wondering or worried because I'm drinking water, don't worry, I have my coffee with me as well. I had a really bad morning, and then later I found out that the coffee that Kai made me had been a decaf one, because what was he thinking? No wonder I was grumpy and tired. But now I have the real thing and I'm feeling much better. Spoken like a true coffee addict. Anyhow, I have some yarn acquisitions, and if you're not interested in that, then please feel free to just come back again next week, because I know not everyone likes to watch that part, but there you go. So first of all is a acquisition which is actually kind of Kai's, and the backstory to that, yes, there is a backstory. When we were in France, we watched the World Cup because we both really like soccer, and you might know that the goalkeepers tend to have very, very interesting shirts in very interesting colors. And I know at least the goalkeeper of Croatia, but possibly other goalkeepers as well, were wearing these neon green and neon yellow tops. And Kai really liked the colors and kind of said, wouldn't it be nice to have socks in that color combination? Which, of course, as a knitter, I was like, yes, of course, let's just do it. So what we did is we ordered this neon yarn, which is exactly the kind of color that we were talking about and seeing on the screen. And you might remember that I just finished a pair of neon socks for Kai, and actually the green is the exact same green that I used for his previous pair. Both of these are socks, 50 gram skeins, which is a brand by Rachel Coopy of Coop Knits. So this one is Krypton, and this one is Helium. And I will make some crazy neon socks for Kai. Personally, I would kind of use one neon and combine it with a neutral. I think that would be more my style, but Kai wants these two together. And I'm not really quite sure what I'm going to do, but I'm thinking maybe just like really white stripes would be fun. So something like that will be coming very soon, and Kai is very excited about that. So yeah, that is one purchase that we made. Next up, I got my shipment of the Hedgehog Fibers Twist Club. So if you haven't received yours and you don't want to see this skein, please look away because I'm going to show it now. So this is the second skein of the Twist Club, and you guys, this might be my favorite hedgehog colorway I've ever received. This is called Foxtrot, and it's in their BFL and nylon high twist base. And this skein is just beautiful. Like, there's so many colors in here, and I think this is just a piece of art, if you ask me. And no, I'm not sponsored by Hedgehog or anyone else for that matter. I just really, really like this skein of yarn. So the first skein that I got in the club wasn't really totally my color scheme, but this has definitely knocked it out of the park. This is just perfect. And again, I can't wait to cast this on into a pair of socks. And last but not least, I made another purchase, but again, for a specific project. So you might remember that just before my holiday, I knit for the first time with Jamieson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight. And I did a hat, and I really, really, really enjoyed that yarn. I thought it was the perfect color work yarn. It's perfectly woolly and beautiful and just everything I love in yarn. So I kind of really wanted a sweaters quantity, and I have been wanting to knit a specific sweater, which is the Threepmuir sweater by Isabel Kramer. And so went on holiday back when I thought I wasn't going to actually find any yarn shops and I wasn't going to have any souvenir yarn. I ordered a sweaters quantity. So the Threepmuir is a colorwork sweater which is mostly in one color and then has colorwork along the yoke. So my main color is this one. This is shade 202, which is actually the same shade that I used for my hat. And then you need two contrast colors, and these are the two contrast colors that I ordered. So the black is shade 81, and the yellow is shade number 121 mix. To be honest, this was not what I was expecting. I ordered this online, and when you order things online, sometimes they look a little bit different, especially if you order them while lying in the sun at a pool and on your phone. So what I was expecting was more sort of like this color combination. This was what I was dreaming of. Instead, it turned out like this. So I'm not quite sure. Maybe it'll be fine. Or maybe I just need one ball of this anyway, so I can always just get another color if I feel like it doesn't work out. Like, there's not a huge contrast, but then again, that might not necessarily matter. So I just have to cast on and see how it goes. But very, very excited about this purchase. And yeah, so that will hopefully be on the needles very soon as well. So can you see I'm on a sweater kick still? But I'm really proud of myself because I am buying yarn as I always do. But I feel like I'm buying more purposeful yarns rather than just single skeins. So yeah, I'm very happy, and there is no knitting police, thank goodness. So yeah. Before I go into life in general, I just really wanted to quickly catch up with what's been going on with the summer stash down, and I'm really, really interested how you guys have been progressing on that. So I've talked about the idea of it before. I just wanted to knit for my stash, and by no means have I been doing a yarn diet, but I feel like it's going really, really well because I like being a productive knitter. I know that knitting, and definitely for me, I'm not a product knitter. Knitting for me isn't about the finished product or project. I very much like the process of knitting, but I am ambitious and I want to achieve things. So for me, I don't want to knit through my stash as fast as possible just for the sake of knitting through my stash and then buying more. But what the Summer Stash Down has done for me is I feel like I'm using my yarn much faster. So a lot of the things like the socks or the sweater that I just shown you, these yarns, usually I probably would have had them in my stash for a year or two. But instead, I feel like I'm just using things more and using things whenever I like, rather than thinking I should use this because that is still very new, or all the crazy things that go on in my head when I choose projects. So I feel like, yes, I buy a lot of yarn, but I'm also quite a productive knitter, and I do knit a lot, and I do knit through quite a lot of stash. So for me, the whole Summer Stash Down so far has been so much fun. I feel like my stash is not necessarily getting smaller, but it's also not getting bigger, and I'm feeling really, really good about using the special yarns rather than having them sit there and get old and do nothing. So that's been my progress, and I would really be interested to hear about your achievements within the knit along and how you feel about it. I'm just really interested in your opinions. So if you want, maybe you will let me know in the threads or on YouTube. That would be really interesting for me. So that is that, and that marks the end of my knitting content for today. So all that's left to talk about is life in general, what's been happening, and possibly a little bit of engagement talk. So if you're not interested in that, that is 100% fine. So in that case, I will just see you again next week. And if you do want to stick around and listen to me ramble on about nothing, then please feel free to do so. So I guess I should talk about the whole getting married thing, because it's kind of the elephant in the room, and it's kind of the elephant in my life. So yeah. So I should preface that by saying that I know that not everyone is going to be interested in that. I always find it hard to talk about these things, same with because I am the sort of person that is very much respectful and open-minded when it comes to people who want to get married, to people who choose not to get married. Same as with kids, I hate it when people tell you you're supposed to have kids, you're supposed to not have kids at a certain age and all that stuff. I just find that very unattractive. And I'm sure there are lots of people who don't want to get married, and maybe you don't want to hear about it. So that's why I have decided to keep the whole wedding talk, unless I'm knitting a wedding dress, which I am not. Keep it to the end, so you don't have to sit there and listen to something that you're not interested in. But again, at the same time, I'm not saying I will not ever mention it again, because again, this is my podcast, and this podcast contains what I want it to contain, and if it's important to me, then I will talk about it. So yeah. Along those lines, I'm not really sure how much I want to be sharing about getting married and wedding plans and all that sort of stuff on the podcast. So if you're interested, I would really like to hear what you guys would be interested in. If you want me to talk about it, if you have certain questions that you want me to answer, I would just really like an open conversation about your suggestions, which doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to do what you suggest, but I would be really interested. So yeah, that is that. In terms of what I might want to talk about in the future, is not really the sort of thing like choosing a cake or picking out candles or all that. I'm not necessarily the person who has dreamt about a princess wedding their entire life. I'm kind of more interested in the things that you don't talk about, but maybe I should start from the beginning. So, Kai and I, we've been going out for what feels like ages, for quite a while, and so the topic of getting married has popped up, as it does, I'm sure you guys know. And it's been something that for a couple of years we know that was going to happen eventually. We both have quite similar sort of views, although I think he is more conservative than I am. And so we actually got engaged when we were in France on our holiday, which was perfect. Again, not the traditional way, but nevertheless, it was it was perfect for us. And it wasn't a huge surprise to anyone, but again, I think that's nice because, I mean, if people are not, if people aren't like, oh my gosh, are you sure you want to get married? Are you sure you want to do that? I mean, that's not really the expectation you have anyways, is it? So anyways, we got engaged, and then we kind of kept it a secret for a little while because first of all, we both wanted to sort it out for ourselves first, like figure out how we felt about it, what we wanted to do. And then, of course, I wanted to tell family first. So we drove up to my parents' place last weekend because I wanted to tell them in person, and it was really lovely. We had a really lovely weekend. And yeah, now we're suddenly full on into wedding planning, which is kind of crazy. So that's sort of the thing that, like, we're both so excited, and but we're mostly excited about actually being married. Like I said, we are not sort of like the dream wedding people. So from, always wanting to get married because we wanted to be married to suddenly having to plan a wedding, which I know we don't have to do that. There are plenty of other ways, but we do want to have like an actual wedding, has been quite intense. And it's something that no one really, I mean, I can't say no one warned me because you know that sort of stuff is difficult. Like, people write books about that, people have jobs doing that. It can't be that easy, right? But still, like, I feel like in the movies and in a lot of stories that people tell, it kind of ends with the engagement and everyone being super happy and then getting married. And for me, it's been an adjustment. I think the funny thing is that Kai and I, we both really know what we want. But because a wedding is supposed to be so complicated and like all these things about flowers and decorations and table cards and a million things that I'm forgetting because I don't know how to get married, these things suddenly make it seem very complicated, and to the point where we both thought we were doing something wrong because it didn't seem that complicated to us. So anyways, long story short, suddenly we're in the whole wedding planning thing, and we are planning to get married in March. So that means that we need to find a location and a date relatively soon. So that's what we've been doing last weekend, and I'm really lucky to have a family that is helping us out in the way that we want them. Like, I'm happy to have some help. So that's been really great, but that's also the reason why there might not be a podcast next week, because we are traveling to figure that sort of stuff out. And that stuff really desperately needs to be sorted out because everything else, we have lots of time, I think. Maybe I naively say because I have no idea, but I think we have lots of time for the rest. But we do need to know a date and a location. So yeah, that's the basic rundown of what's been happening. And again, I mentioned in the beginning, your guys' support has been incredible and so loving, and it's really, really just warmed my heart. So thank you once again for that. In terms of knitting, I have no idea what dress I want, but I know what I want to knit. So that's a good thing. Although I'm not going to say it right now because although yes, I do want to kind of order the yarn and start knitting, I am sane enough to know that I need the dress first, and then maybe then the knitting should follow. So that's where I am with that, but I will be knitting something for the wedding, which will be very exciting. So that is that. Of course, other life stuff has been happening as well because we got engaged 2 days before we left back home from our vacation, and then of course we're immediately immersed into work. I've been traveling a lot. Then we spent a weekend with our family, or my family, so then it was back to work. So it's been really, really busy, and we haven't really had that much time, and sadly I haven't had that much knitting time. But we're back into the flow of things, which is good. And this weekend is really chill. We are doing quite a lot of socializing, but we had time to just be at home and actually clean the apartment and do boring house stuff, which has been really, really nice. Last week, like I said, I was traveling, and then we did our big firm run, which I've been training for ages, and it was very interesting because we were standing ready to run in the rain for about over an hour. And then they blocked the entire event and said it was too dangerous, even though the thunderstorm by that time had actually gone. But they just blocked the entire race, which was so sad. But then in the end, my colleague and I, and I think at least like 1,000 other people, because it was a 39,000 runners event, a lot of us, we decided to run anyways because it is in a public place and it was just through a park and so on. So we actually ran and it was so much fun. It was one of the hardest things that I've done, not because the run was really hard, but because I had been actually, I think, in total been standing up waiting for 3 hours before we actually got to run. And then we sprinted off because we had to find our way into the track, and then my condition was just really, really terrible. But my colleague and I, we made it together, and I'm still so proud, and it was so much fun. And now I want to do all the runs and all the competitions, and I'm more motivated than ever, which is really saying something because I used to not be a sports person. Like, if you said to me a couple of years ago that I was going to go running on the weekends, get married, live in an apartment in Munich, like all these things are things that I would have never picked for myself, but I'm really happy about them. So yeah, that's what's been happening. Life is intense, work has been intense, but also quite fun. So all in all, I'm very happy, and I'm very happy that today, in the middle of a heat wave, today is a really cold and rainy day, and it's really, really nice. So I think I have waffled on enough. I have actually written notes, but now I can't read them. That's good. Anyways, like I said, I'm not 100% sure if there will be a podcast next week, but I will let you know. And until I see you again, thank you so much for watching. Have a great week. Let me know what you think about the various topics that I mentioned, and I will see you very soon. Bye!